Good evening, and this is the NAACP Chicago Westside branch. I'm Rebecca Rains, the Criminal Justice Chair, and I've come to talk to you today about two topics. The first one being preserve the records, that's what we've named it, and it discusses preserving the records of police misconduct files. These files have been around since 1967, and they're right now up for talking about destruction, permanent destruction, for the past 50 so years. The other topic that we'll be talking about is the Independent Police Review Authority, which was recently disbanded by the mayor about 30 some days ago. And we'll just be discussing what Effra was and what we hope to get now that a new authority is going to be created. You can find our email, the Westside branch, at westsidenaacp@gmail.com. Okay? So to get started, back in January of 2011, the Westside branch put out a press release speaking about the Local Records Act. We had just become familiar with it, and we were trying to find out exactly what it meant. We had heard that the documents were going to be destroyed, and we began to put together actions to go before the state to ask them to create laws and policies to keep those records. We believe the records are important because if they are destroyed, as you can see here on the screen, it won't allow people who are already in prison to possibly be able to make a judgment about what's going on. It also there'll be no record, there'll be no pattern, there'll be no practice of what police have done in the past. So I'm going to just read the act here. The Illinois Local Records Act requires local governments to keep public records and outlines the procedure by which public bodies may destroy public records. In 2014, the Illinois Appellate Court, in a decision called Calvin v. City of Chicago, affirmed that police records belong to the public and in the public domain. Therefore, we have recently made that claim that because those records are public, that there's no right for them to be destroyed, and we had to go to the state. Because of that, our plea, we've been for the past 6 months going before different representatives and senators and saying, please create bills to keep these records on, actually just to keep them permanently, so that they can't be destroyed, so that if they're ever needed, they'll be available. We created Senator Van Pelt created the law SB 2233, which amends the Local Records Act and provides that any act that had a complaint, an investigation, or an adjudication of any police misconduct will be saved, everything from 1967 going forward. And then Representative Ford put through the HB 6266 law that is actually the original act that we put in together got broken up into these 6 different acts. And in this act, it asks that they just permanently retain the records. And each one kind of goes to a different, smaller part of the act overall, saying that if you take this part will do the part about cameras. Another part does it about the law. Another part saves people from having their records destroyed. It kind of got divided up, and we're asking all of the residents to just call down to the representatives and say HB 6266 and SB 2233 to make sure that those records get passed. Right now, the legislators are about to leave. They actually have probably already left office for the summer, and it was in a criminal committee with a 9-6 vote, mostly because of police unions kind of intimidating legislators, feeling pressure to not pass these kinds of bills because those who are guilty don't want any record of it. And that's exactly what we want to preserve. So the next thing that we've been coming across is the Independent Police Review Authority, IPRA, which was an agency created to police, another thing that deals with police misconduct. Back in August, when we first started our process of looking into this, we found out that the IPRA is run by a superintendent, and the superintendent has the right to decide which cases get investigated, and then which disciplines would be administered to any officer that was being investigated. From this process, over this time, as everyone knows, Laquan McDonald, the video came out, and everything kind of blew up from there. The Department of Justice got called in. The mayor created the Police Task Accountability Force, and everything kind of became a magnifying glass. And the first thing that got looked at was Effra. So about 30 days ago, from recommendations from the Police Accountability Task Force, from the different pressures from the community, they decided to disband Effra. What has not been announced is what's going to replace the agency. So we're looking to try to find out what are you going to do to make sure that justice reigns over in Chicago for its residents? How are you going to find any real independence from what we've had in the past? The superintendent was initially established by the mayor, was under the control of the mayor, and was only able to do things as they were bound by the police department. So if they found an officer was doing something that was unjust, then they would go through the process, go through what they would call the command channel. And after the Effra investigators would make their investigation, they would send it through the police officer's command channel, which means all of their supervisors. Their supervisor would look over the case, make a determination on what kind of discipline was necessary. It would go to the police superintendent, and it would be decided upon from that point. Often, in most cases, what we were finding out is that there was no discipline put in. Most cases were being found unsustained and kind of thrown out. And majority of the Chicago residents just felt like they were not getting any kind of justice. This is part of why Effra was disbanded about 30 days ago. What we're looking to find out is, so what replaces it? We're hoping that that agency is going to be something that's going to be purely independent in a form that it won't necessarily have complete mayoral control. It'll be something that's created by the grassroots organizations of the community. Groups like the NAACP, there are other grassroots organizations and religious organizations that have been doing this work for a very long time in the area that all would want to come through and say, this is what we want, this is justice. There's been some discussion that a fair cops ordinance is going to become the new reigning power of the authority. We at the NAACP have made a set of recommendations. We have sought to seek something that is going to be a little bit more transparent. So right here, we have our recommendations. Number one, we would like the police department not to have any direct input into the disciplinary judgment of an accused officer. If their case has been sustained, then we think that their allegations should be made by that independent agency versus by the Chicago Police Department. We also think that the new authority should have complete independence. And independence does mean that the Chicago Police Department won't have a way to say, oh, we think that this officer should do this. So that command channel that I was talking about earlier would be disbanded. Now only the independent agency would have a set of minimums that they will put on any officer that was accused. The new authority would be chosen by a grassroots panel of known community leaders who would come together every 4 years and make a decision on who should be the new superintendent of the new authority. They would make that decision based on qualifications, experience, and their ability to define justice, their past. We think that a minimum sentencing should be assigned to all violations that have been known about to any sustained case. that comes to say that if an officer is accused of being verbally abusive, that action should have a certain minimum discipline of maybe a day of suspension or a verbal reprimand that proceeds up. We think that there should be minimums associated to all violations. And as of right now, it's kind of just up to the discretion of whoever is in charge to determine what has happened. And as I said in the past, what has usually happened is this case is not sustained and it's thrown out and nothing happens. That officer is back on active duty and just, it's not even a slap on the wrist. We think that once an officer has been accused, while they're in their process of going through their trial, they should not be able to be on active street duty while they're awaiting their judgment. And if they're accused, then they're progressive. Their discipline should be progressive over time. So if they've done something, their case was sustained, now they're being punished for what they did. If they get accused of that thing again, then the next punishment should be harsher and harsher up into termination. That it shouldn't be that you have an officer that has 76 complaints against them for the same thing and they've never had a discipline over it. Or the discipline is that they got a reprimand. Or the discipline is a 1-day suspension or a 1-day paid suspension. We think that it should be progressive to what's going on. We at the NAACP do support what's now being called the Citizens Monitor proposal. It is the basis of a proposal created by Craig Futterman and Sheila Betty that says that basically the authority should be transparent. They have many laws and portions of their monitor that says that every 30 days, everything that's been done by the police department should be posted to the website. Every 60 days, those things should be put into a report and posted there. Everything should have a method of transparency so that you can find out what's going on. A reporting system that gives them a sense of justice and a sense of, reliability to the community. The community is going to be able to see what's going on with them and just be able to make a judgment on if they feel like justice is really being served. We are concerned because in the past there have been other organizations just like Effra. One was called the Protective Police Service, and they were there. They were disbanded in 2007 when Effra was initially created. And what we found out from our little research and our history is that the OPS was just a old version of what Effra became. So Effra was just a new name. It got a new leader, a new name, but the structure and the process was nothing different. It was once again in 2007 the community has started to uprise about a lack of justice and police brutality issues. And so Effra was created with the dissemination of OPS. We are worried now that in 2016 a similar thing is happening some 20 years later, that Effra has been disbanded only to get a new name under a new agency that does the same thing and gives the same lack of justice to its citizens. So we're hoping that as we look forward, some of these recommendations that we've made will be considered. They will be looked at as if you can't provide these things and you can't provide justice to the people. So we need to make sure that independence reigns and that the community is having a voice at the table as we look at these various things. You can see below that you can also talk more to us about Effra by coming to the branch. You can see the email address there is below us at branch@ChicagoWestside NAACP.org. And you can also give us a call at 773-269-5890. We look forward to hearing from people, finding out what's going on with the community. We're going to be having a forum in the next couple of weeks called The Cracks in the Criminal Justice System. Toward the end of June, we'll be looking to find out what other places where criminal justice is not necessarily being justice at all. We've seen that we recently got a new state's attorney and other changes that have occurred by people coming out and putting in their vote. And now we want to look and make sure that there's no other places where justice is kind of seeping through. And we think that their police state system is working with the justice system to kind of make sure that when police are being accused of things, they're kind of being able to go free by not having anyone saying that you have to hold the bar here. We've seen that our judges are maybe not holding up the highest bar. We think that when they are going and being prosecuted, that they're not being held to the same standard that a regular citizen would be held to for doing something similar. And while we do understand that police officers have a very hard job and we need them to do what they're doing, if we find that we have one that's not doing something correct, they need to face justice. If they don't face justice, then it gives them a kind of bravado that they can continue to just rank over the community and treat people as if they're not people, like they maybe are just animals, that they can kind of roll over. And so it's important that we have a justice system that reigns justice for everyone. I think that majority of us, when we look at the system, we want to trust our police system. We want to trust our justice system. And so it takes us to kind of come through and say, trusting the system means that we know that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. And we have to put down our magnifying glasses on the entire system and say, where's the gaps, where are the holes, and where are things falling through? If we don't do that, if we're not holding ourselves accountable to put people that are above us in their place, we can't expect to have justice. We can't expect things to go anywhere or any further than they have in the past. So as we look to these things, we have those upcoming notes about preserving the records. We have our upcoming ideas about making sure that we have the new Effra, whatever it's going to be called, the new Citizens Monitor, is going to be something that's going to be purely independent. And those two things work together, because if you have police records, if you're able to say what the police have done in the past, according to their records, what they're going to do, then when you have a system like an Effra, they're able to go back and say, well, this officer did this thing over so many years. It gives us the ability to say, well, maybe this isn't the right thing. Maybe they aren't in the place where they need to be in order to really progress justice. Maybe they're not in the right area of the neighborhood. Maybe there's certain factors that are pushing them to where they are. So that's one of the other reasons why preserving the records is so important and so well connected to having an independent policing agency, which is what we're hoping the Citizens Monitor or the new Effra will be, whatever it's going to be called. We're hoping that the mayor of the city of Chicago will speak to us, will hear from us about our recommendations. We've been speaking with people from the community. Most of the people from the community are saying, even if the system isn't perfect, at least let us know what's going on. Give us a call and let us know that our case has not been dropped. We've heard people say that they've had cases sit around for years, and when they call, they never could get through. The new Citizens Monitor has a transparency protocol in it that allows you to find out where your complaint is, what standing is in, if it's on the police department side or if it's on the policing agency side, and what status is in, if you are going to be considered, if it's going to be sustained or unsustained. These are all factors that allow citizens to feel like they're experiencing justice. And then, of course, we all feel like we experience justice if we have those records that are going to be able to come through and say, this is what has happened in the past, this is what is likely to happen in the future as we make our decisions for what we're going to be able to do. We've seen some cases as of late where officers have been accused of doing some pretty violent things and they've been dismissed. They're back on the street, they're back able to kind of do those things again, and it's because not only do you have people who are seeking to protect those who are not right, but we have right now a system that is protecting people that are not right. And it's just a matter of pulling that system apart and looking at its different parts. Some parts are good and some parts are bad. Some parts need revision, some parts are just antiquated and they need to be revised. And if we're not doing that as a community, we're not doing our part. So we look to Effra. We look to the Effras, actually their leadership. We look to the mayor, even the Police Accountability Task Force, and we ask them, what more can we do to help you give us the justice that we deserve and need? And part of the thing is we have some advocates out there who have been looking at these situations for the past couple of years. The NAACP has joined that calls to say these are the things that need to be done. You need to seek independence. You need to seek a minimum sentencing. You need to seek that you have prosecutors that are not connected to the police officers so that they're able to do their job with objectivity. And you need to have judges that are able to do their jobs objectively. And if you don't have those things kind of sitting in their own little holes, then what usually happens is that things slip through. People tend to protect their friends. It's our human nature. So we want to make sure that if you have complete independence, that you're not able to sit and just protect your friends, because it's our human nature to do so. So I want to lay us back before we go. We have a few seconds left to let you know that we would like you to give us a call. If you can see here at the bottom of the screen at 773-261-5890. You can call us, ask us more questions about what's going on. You can also email us at branch, that's BRANCH, at ChicagoWestsideNAACP.org. And we are really hoping to hear from you. We want to hear more from the community about what's going on. We thank you for hearing from us. If you have any questions, I'm Rebecca, the contact. Thank you. Bye-bye.